Hey fellow babies, welcome back to this week's Pachter Factor on SIFTD.net. We appreciate your patronage on Patreon if you're watching it real time. If you're watching a week later on YouTube, thank you very much for being interested. The only price of admission is a follow for @SIFTDGames on Twitter and a follow for @MichaelPachter. Our first question this week comes from YouTube from from JC Chacon Jr. 6. Wow. So wait, there's 6 different people with JC Chacon Jr.? That's not possible. That is impossible. I could see 2 of you guys, but not 6 of you guys. Wow. Unless you're like George Foreman and you got like 5 kids all named George Jr. With the encouraging statistics that Microsoft recently shared about backwards compatibility usage by its users, do you think it will make Sony reevaluate its strategy? Well, good question. No. I think Sony is doing a lot right, and I think that the numbers for PlayStation kind of prove that. And I think Sony is very comfortable with the strategy. So, I think the answer is just because Microsoft does something doesn't mean that Sony will. Microsoft's doing something different, and I think, Microsoft has this Game Pass program, and I think that Game Pass is less about subscription revenue than it is about helping publishers to maximize revenue. So I think that what Microsoft's trying to do is get you to play an old game and then spend money in the game. So the publisher gets a royalty on that $10 Game Pass, and then they also get the money you spend on DLC or microtransactions. And I think backward compatibility is a lot like that. I think if you play Red Dead 1, which is available on Xbox One right now, it's a 2010 game that came out on Xbox 360 and PS3. If you play Red Dead 1, how likely are you to buy Red Dead 2? Pretty likely. So I think it's good for them and good for the publisher to get people interested in older games, which could be any version of Call of Duty, any version of Fallout, any version of Battlefield, if that gets you to buy the next one. And so, that's just a strategy. Sony could do the same thing, and so the answer is, sure, they might reevaluate their strategy. I think Sony is a very competent business company. I think they run their business correctly. I think they are constantly reevaluating their strategy, and if they think that they're doing it right by not having as much backward compatibility, then they're not going to change. If they think there's an opportunity that, they see the same opportunity as Microsoft, they will. So good question. I don't know what they're going to do. It really depends on results. And again, you said the words encouraging statistics. I don't know how those statistics translate into profit for anybody. I guess if you buy Red Dead, Take-Two's happy they made more money. But the stat that really matters is engagement with the franchise that makes you likely to become a fan of that franchise and play it in the future. And that's what third parties care about. The first party only cares about selling consoles and selling lots and lots of software. If Sony thinks that they're winning doing what they're doing, they're unlikely to change. We'll see. Next question this week from SIFTD, from the Stand user. Since Sega sent out review codes early, most reviews and podcast discussions for Yakuza 6 were published a month before its release. By the way, that was true of God of War as well. I actually remember reading reviews on God of War and wondering, God, did I miss the game release? Yeah, but that was crazy. That was like, I was looking to see if I'd missed the game, and I was like, it's not coming out yet. By the time the game got in consumers' hands, the zeitgeist, great word, had already died down. Does sending review copies out to the press so early hurt sales? What is the strategy behind a publisher giving journalists access and permission to post reviews well before a game's release date? Okay, so the answer is there's a balance. And, if the game is going to be the best game of all time, so let's just go with, this year's version of Red Dead or this year's version of God of War. I don't think it would matter if you put the reviews out 6 months early. If the games are legit 95 rated Metacritic score, my God, that I think people will be freaking out. Where is this game? I want to play it. It's a 95. It's not going to die. That's great. If the game sucks, it's a serious problem. So if you put out a game and it gets a 75, it's like no interest at all. THQ had a game a few years ago. It was a racing game. It was juiced. And THQ put out this stat. Oh my God, we had 500,000 downloads of the trial level, and oh my God, how great, the game's gonna sell like 5 million units. And they put out all these other stats of all these different games and how few downloads. And what they did was they let consumers try a genuinely shitty game. And so the word got out quickly, this game sucks, don't waste your money, and it bombed. And you know, it's a great tool to release stuff early to the press and develop buzz if the game's good. It's a terrible tool if the game's bad. So what you see most publishers do is embargo reviews until the day of launch. So the game reviews do not come out till the day of launch. And if you remember back to the Star Wars Battlefront 2 debacle with loot boxes, EA has shot itself in the foot because they have this thing called EA Access, and it gives EA Access members early access to the game itself. They get it 2 weeks, I think, before the game launches. It might be a week, but anyway, it's before the public is able to buy the game. And so I don't know how many EA Access members there are. I'm guessing 1 million or so. But anyway, those guys got a hold of it, and the next thing you know, 450,000 negative Reddit posts about what a piece of crap Star Wars was. Big mistake. That destroyed sales of the game. So I think, you know, on the one hand, EA wants to build a subscription service and get people to sign up for EA Access and get all this stuff early. On the other hand, if it's bad, if there's a problem, then my God, you're going to hurt sales. Now, the real problem is you guys out there, okay? Because you guys are just critical assholes, and no one's allowed to do anything that's not absolutely perfect, or you will find a reason to hate it. No, seriously, if somebody says anything you don't like, then you immediately diss them and say they suck. So, you know, no one's allowed to do anything wrong. And Mass Effect Andromeda, yeah, facial animation, who cares? Like, again, you guys do, I get it. Loot boxes, you know, oh my God, they're expensive, or microtransactions, onerous. Don't buy anything, whatever. But instead, it's like, no, everything has to be flawless. The game has to be gigantic. Everything has to be for free. Guess what? That describes Rockstar to a T, okay? The games are gigantic. There's a billion things to do. Games are super fun. They always get high ratings. I know the Rockstar guys are kind of tough on journalists. If you give them a bad review, you get like blocked for life. But let's be real, they make good games. So, you know, I get that a few guys, like I think Jim Sterling's banned for life from Rockstar events. But
I've had some really interesting discussions with Rockstar PR.
Yeah, but I get, you know, but
the last time was the Max Payne review that.
Yeah, because those are all 82s and whatever.
I was on the phone with them for almost 3 hours.
Yeah, that game. But guess what? That game wasn't great, and so it got.
They refused to admit it.
Right, and the thing I like about game journalists is, you know, yes, at the margin, 1 or 2% of them are going to, you know, prostitute themselves because they like going on the junkets and getting all the free shit. But 98% of them are genuine, and they're going to tell their, you know, their constituency what they think about a game. And so if a game gets a 95, odds are it's a pretty damn good game. So I guess what I'm saying is make good games, and if they're good and you're confident in it, let the reviewers have it early. Lift the embargo. Let them tell everybody how great it is. If the game sucks, then stick with the industry practice of nobody's allowed to release anything until the day of the game, you know, game launch. And so honestly, no, I don't believe that the buzz dies at all. Our next question from SIFTD from Zero Kaiser. Hello, Mr. Pack. In this generation, we saw the consoles becoming PCs on the hardware side and even the software side too. What do you think will happen with the next generation? Will Microsoft and Sony look at Steam as a competitor? Will they make the disk drive optional? Will Steam launch a service like PlayStation Plus or Xbox Live? What about a Steam version of PlayStation Now or Xbox Game Pass? Thanks. Consoles are going to exist. Consoles will very likely have a disk drive. And the real reason for a slot for discs is that you can't sell a console without retailers. And even if Amazon's a retailer, because it's a physical good. You got to buy it at retail. You can't download your console. So if you have to buy a console at retail, you can't say to a retailer, hey, please promote and sell my console, but we're not going to have any games available. So once you sell the console to your customer, we're going to take the customer over and we own the relationship, and we're going to download everything and screw you. We're never going to let you sell a game again. So you kind of have to give a concession to the retailer that at least hold out the hope that the consumer will come back and buy discs. The second reason for a disk drive is there's a healthy percentage of consumers, and I'd say 50%, who value the concept of used games, either as a seller, as a trader, so they get value back, or as a purchaser because they're cheap and they want to buy old games. So I think used games have some value. I think some healthy number of consumers value used games. So I don't see disk drives going away. Sony and Microsoft get consoles. They're going to keep doing consoles. Nintendo obviously going to keep doing consoles. Microsoft understands that we're migrating to a PC structure, which is why they launched Xbox Anywhere on Windows 10 PCs. And I think Microsoft's going to flip the importance of Xbox Anywhere and Xbox on the next cycle. So I think the next cycle, games are going to be promoted as PC playable. I don't think that they care if you play it on a PC or you play it on a tablet or you play it on an Amazon Echo device. You know, you're going to get evolution in smart devices in your home, whether it's a laptop, a tablet, a phone, or a smart device like an Alexa, Amazon Echo, or a Google Home, or an Apple HomePod, or an Apple TV. So you're going to get the Trojan horse in your home, where you buy a Ring home security system or a Nest, thermostat, and you decide you need to control that with a Google Home or with a Amazon Alexa enabled device, and that device is just going to happen to have a GPU built in, and you're not going to know it. And then one day you're going to get your email from Amazon that says, instead of saying, hey, it looks like you're out of laundry detergent, you need to reorder, it's going to say, hey, would you like to buy Call of Duty? So that's where I see it going. If I'm a publisher, I can't wait for that day. And think of the analogy to movies, right? The publishers today are kind of like the movie studios back in the 1940s, when the only place you could watch a movie was the theater. And they're being presented with the opportunity to fast forward 75 years, where you have an opportunity to watch a movie now in the theater, at home on television, at home streaming, at home on a DVD, on your phone, streaming or downloaded, on your tablet, on your laptop, any way that you want to get it. So that's what I think happens with games. I think we collapse that 75-year evolution we saw with movies, and we move games to available on any device. Obviously, you're not going to play Call of Duty on your phone with thumb controllers.
People play Fortnite.
But you're going to put your phone in a docking station and play it on your TV with a controller. And there will be, people do play Fortnite, and I have to say,
people like it. We had questions that we cut for the show about this.
The Fortnite players on the phone are just going to get their asses kicked by the Fortnite player on a PC. But it's a way to introduce the player to it. So you can it's not a dumbed down version, it's just that the screen size, view, and control scheme makes it difficult. It's easier on a mouse and keyboard. I think it's easier with a controller, but not as fast. But if you're a controller player, you like it. I just think that Fortnite's the poster child for the migration all these games are going to make. And it's more revenue for the publisher if they can sell a console game to a non-console owner. I mean, it's proof. It's intuitively obvious if there isn't a console as a barrier to entry to buy a game, you're going to sell more copies of the game. So I think that's what you see in the next generation. I think that this Steam winning, probably not. Steam is only going to win if developers put their games on Steam. I think what you're going to actually see is the opposite. I think that the major publishers, Activision, EA, Take-Two, Ubisoft, Nintendo, are going to try to have their own stores and sell it to you directly. I think there will be an aggregator of that content, and it'll be Amazon or Apple or Google, not Steam. I think that these guys are not going to want to pay 30%, and so Steam might participate, but I think the download fee might drop below 30 from anybody who really wants to win this audience, and I think it's Amazon that wins, if I'm right. But Steam's got a place in it, and I don't think you're going to need a Steam box. Steam Box is just a PC. Ultimately, you don't need anything but a PC.
They already failed.
And the PC might be your phone. So yeah, so I don't think it really matters. Last question this week from Twitter from @BrianGar. It looks like a state representative in Rhode Island wants to implement a 10% tax on M-rated games due to their violence. How much would it hurt sales? Would it violate the First Amendment? If a state taxes speech, that's a restraint on free speech. So it's one thing to say we're going to put a 10% tax on all video games. I think you can do that because it doesn't distinguish between games and say that we're singling out games that we don't like because of their content. So I think you can, good example, you can have a sales tax. And you can have a different sales tax rate for video games if you want. I mean, you're allowed to. But to say, no, we're going to differentiate among games, and games that are E and T rated and EC10 and whatever are exempt from the tax, but games that are M rated have to pay the tax. That is a tax on speech. So absolutely violates the First Amendment. It's not going to pass. I mean, I don't think the legislature's that dumb. Maybe it will, but again, I guess we have legislatures passing rules that are clearly unconstitutional. Like outlawing abortion. I think it just happened in Oklahoma or something, or Indiana. So yeah, I guess it's possible. Most legislatures don't like taxes, and this is not a big source of revenue. So I'd say that the odds of this passing are pretty low. If it does pass, there will be a court challenge, and the publisher will win, the ESA will win. So I don't see it happening. As far as how much would it hurt sales, Rhode Island. I mean, I don't even know how many people are in Rhode Island, not very many. It's a tiny fraction of game sales, and if you're Call of Duty in Rhode Island, let's say that Rhode Island accounts for 1% of Call of Duty sales, and there's no way. So probably 0.5%. And the game costs 10% more, you probably lose 10% of your purchases in Rhode Island. So it's 10% of 0.5%, which is 0.05%, rounding error, nobody would notice. It's not going to pass, I don't think. If it does pass, it's going to be defeated in court. So again, if you want to, tax anything you want in any state, go for it. But to single out a particular type of speech, it's just foolish. We're wrapping up this week's Pachter Factor. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully you're watching on SIFTD.net and you are a Patreon patron. And if you are, Shane, thanks you for your support.
Thank you.
If you're watching on YouTube, you're getting it a week late, and I appreciate your support, but I'd like you to follow @SIFTD Games and learn about all the other stuff they offer, so maybe we convince you to become a Patreon patron. And please follow me @Michael Pachter, and tell a couple of friends. If you're watching this on a Friday, give me a follow Friday and let all your followers know they should be following me too.